Man, Google keeps getting better and better. They have been cooking lately, and they might have released one of the best models I've tried in a long time. Now, when I've done this in the chat interface, I've been incredibly impressed. It's not perfect. There are times I have to guide it a little bit more, but I've been very, very, very impressed. So I posted this in my Discord. This is the one-shot pool game that I typically do to test out models. And I don't want to oversell this, but this was probably the best version I've ever seen. Not only did it have everything positioned right, the physics were great. The one thing that I had to tweak a little bit, to be totally fair, is I made the velocity of the ball, the momentum of the cue ball, faster. But physics worked great. They even indicated the 8 ball properly and have stripes on it. I was very impressed with this. This led me down a path of doing a significant amount of testing. So that brings me to the point now where I think Google has caught up with Claude. I think it's caught up with OpenAI, and it may be on the verge of surpassing them. But unfortunately, what we have is this to use currently. The experimental endpoints are typically highly throttled, so I can't really do a side-by-side comparison at speed and cost. We don't know what the cost is going to be, but I will say a couple things here stand out to me. The 1 million token context limit, that is freaking amazing. If this behaves well at even 500,000 or 400,000 tokens, like it does when I'm testing it at a 50 to 60 to 100,000, I'm going to be blown away by this. I am incredibly hyped by this. So what I've decided to do is do a side-by-side test like I did in my last video, where I was comparing Claude versus DeepSeek v3. But this time, I'm actually moving into my production code base, because one of the bits of feedback that I got in the last video is that we should test it in some more real use cases. So we're going to do that, but we're also going to do some like fun ones at the end here. The first one is a new feature that I'm going to be implementing. This feature is not going to be simple. I do not expect either one of these to get it right on the first try, but this is how I work typically. I was thinking through all the steps that I want to have done. And I don't want to give you all the details of my code base, but basically I want to build a new page. I want to call it chat.ts.view. I want it to look and use the same format as my other pages, but I'm going to be giving it a mockup that I've generated with ChatGPT. And this is not perfect in any way, but I just want to see how it can implement something like this from a mockup, because typically I have designers create mockups for me, and then I use those mockups to help me get like really fast tracked through my development. So this test is around two things. Can it follow a mockup in some way? And how well does it do at navigating a bigger code base? All right, so I finished tweaking this some. This is typically how I talk to AI. Now, one of the things that someone mentioned in my last video as well is, am I prompting differently? And I'm expecting the same results from a model. And maybe I'm a little bit naive here, but my philosophy is AI should be as skilled as a somewhat experienced programmer. Maybe that's a 1 year junior or a 2 year, 3 year mid level. I should be able to give them high level details without being so explicit and have them infer the rest of the information or ask me if they've got questions about it. So yes, if you prompt differently, you will get different results. But I'm just doing this to kind of share like my experience with it. I'm not promising you that my tests are the end all be all. I'm just trying to learn. And if someone has new ways to prompt or ways that I should be doing something, jump into Discord and share that with me. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off, and we're going to follow along to see what happens. And just to verify this right now, okay, I have now switched over to Google Gemini's API key. I've selected the Gemini 2.5 Pro Exp 0325 model because OpenRouters is completely busted. We're going to kick this off now. On the left, we have Claude 3.7 Sonnet. On the right, we have Google Pro 2.5. I've given it both the screenshot. Again, it's not a perfect screenshot. We're just testing to see how it navigates my code base. I did actually add the context of my components in here. We're going to go ahead and fire this off and see what happens. This is the code mode. I have not changed anything. This is what default comes with root code. So ideally, this is just going to work out of the box. We now have the two chat.ts.view files that I asked for. I'll be able to tell you pretty quickly if it generates it the way I want it to. So I'm just going to poke in here real quick. Yeah, it did it kind of. Yeah, Yeah, it's unfortunate. This isn't exactly the way I like to do it, but it did not listen to me directly on looking at my other file for the format. Let's see what ends up happening as it kind of updates everything now. So it looks like the Claude 3.7 one is actually updating the sidebar now. Very good. And then we've got the Google one updating my router.ts file. So it's getting the pathing in there properly. Now we still do have this error sitting here where it's trying to import from view. So I'll need to probably fix that, unfortunately, manually. Now, Claude actually hit an error, and this is what happens once in a while. This is just part of using Claude. I've got this overloaded API error. So I'm going to go ahead and hit resume task here and let that one finish out. All right, so let's take a look. This one is updated. Great. I've got the nice path in there. Sidebar also looks correct at first glance. And it's really going to be this one that I need it to fix. All right, so basically I'm going to tell the Google Pro one, I don't like the way it did it, and I'm giving it the format that I actually want it to come into. And I tell it that is an example, and I tell it the file again it can go look at. So we're going to kick that off, and we're going to hopefully see it update chat.ts.view based on that. Now let's take a look at what Claude did. So we have the sidebar, very similar update. That is perfect. I have my sidebar set up so simple now, like it was able to figure that out right away. So now what I'm going to be really curious about is, yeah, so this did follow my directions. It formatted it the way I like, just to keep it consistent with the rest of my code base. And I'm going to be curious to see if Google Pro 2.5 can actually follow those directions here in a second. So yeah, I'd say Claude is done. We're going to see what happens here on the Google one. So it didn't do it again. I'm going to kick it off again here, and I'm going to hope that it actually fixes it. I was much more explicit at the time. I said I do not want to define component at all. I want it to just define my default. So I want it to do export default, name it, do data computed methods. That's what I want. I wonder why it's not doing that or not understanding what I'm saying there. If you guys have any ideas about like what I'm doing wrong and prompting this, let me know. Because stuff like this kind of gets irritating because you're literally giving it examples, especially when it's got a million tokens of context it can use. I would expect it to be able to pull in whatever it needs for that particular thing. All right, we got it. We got what I wanted. This is excellent. So I did have to just be a little bit more specific. Let's see what else it's doing. It's actually running another API check here. Final cost on Claude was 30 cents. Of course, it's going to be free on Google because it's experimental. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run both of them. And then I'll have to run one at a time, and then I'll show you what they look like, and we can decide which one we like better. Okay, here is the Claude one. It's working. It didn't add this directly where I wanted it. I wanted that at the top. Got my previous chat, so let's just take a look here. Test. Yeah, so this actually is not bad. I'm actually pretty impressed with this. I would iterate on this a bunch, but I would say pretty good overall. Again, this is just me getting kind of stubbed out to work on it. There is one change I had to make, just to be totally honest, but it's actually a good change. So I have feature gating, which basically, based on the plan you have, you get access to features. Claude took it upon itself to actually add in the feature available for AI chat. In this case, I just turned it off. I forced it to being on. We also locked this on the back end too, but it's more of like a UI and back end lock. So this is a good thing, but you know, it caught me off guard because it did have it like screen blocked initially. But yeah, the colors aren't perfect, but the styling's not bad. Let me go ahead and refresh here. Like this looks pretty good. I am very, very happy with this. All right, and here is the Google one. Not bad. It didn't pick up my colors as well, but let's take a look if this actually puts us in. Yeah, this is not terrible. This would be just fine to start working with. You know, they don't have the icon. That's fine because I don't actually have a chat icon. You know, sometimes Claude will generate it, but Claude chose to choose like my default icon or something. I just want to see how this actually works. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty neat. Um, so I don't know. I think both did fairly well. I did have to fight with Gemini 2.5 Pro a little bit more, but I got where I needed to be. The code looks fine. I do have these weird errors that I need to actually dig into, but it builds fine. The context seems to be working great. I think this just might be my I might not have a linter set up or something in this version. Just to note, the right version is one that I just basically recloned. So I might not have something configured correctly in that particular environment. But it all is working correctly there. So the next thing I want to do is fix this table. The big issue that you run into is, if you're on a little bit of a smaller screen, it's not responsive very well. But at the same time, I want all the data to be visible, and I also don't want it to wrap. And this isn't an application that you typically use on your phone. So really what I want it to do is work to about, I would say, tablet size, maybe 1200 or something. So what I'm thinking I want to do is make the text smaller and sort of adjust the entire thing so that we still get all the data, but we don't have such long, big fields when this is happening. For example, we don't have to take up this entire space here because when we click on it, we can actually have it open up a box. All right, so we're going to kick this off now. I gave it the context of the file that I want it to change. Ideally, it's just going to touch this one file, so both should have a very good shake at this. I really just want it to dynamically change the font size and the width of the columns as the page shrinks. We'll see what it comes up with here. It could be trickier than what I have in my head for how I would actually implement it. We'll see what happens. This is actually pretty funny. It actually made the same mistake again with wanting to put comments in there and then has to remove it. So it has to do multiple calls, add some comments, remove it, add some calls, or add some comments, remove it. Look at this. Okay, I did it again. Sorry about that. I'll remove the invalid comment. That's hilarious. Huh. I hope it does it again. Look at this. I apologize profusely for making the same mistake repeatedly. It seems like I'm having trouble remembering not to put comments inside the template tag like that. I will remember the invalid comment now. I don't think I've ever seen a model do that. That is hilarious. Oh my goodness. I do love this rate limiting feature by root code, by the way. Okay, so here's what Claude came up with. I maybe didn't explain it quite what I wanted. I was hoping I could keep the font big at this size. But to be fair, I actually don't mind this that much because it shrinks up to about, let's see when I lose it, 1260 or so. So I could probably tweak this. And then I would probably want to set breakpoint so that the font's slightly bigger when I have the room for it. But this is actually a little bit more responsive. And I would continue iterating on this. I wouldn't revert this and just stop here. I think this is a great first pass here. Very excited to see that. All right, here is the Gemini 2.5 Pro one. This looks the same. I like that it looks the same here. So it does shrink it, but it doesn't shrink it enough. So I didn't get the result that I would exactly want. The breakpoint might just need to be adjusted there. I'm actually doing a follow-up here to see if I can improve the Gemini 2.5 Pro one a bit, because it might be better than I'm thinking. It looked to me like the breakpoint was set maybe at 1024 or something like that, and it may have misunderstood the 1024 that I gave it as where the point is I wanted it to shrink. So now I'm actually telling it to change that breakpoint, and we'll see what it ends up doing after this. Okay, so it finished. Let's take a look and to see if it did it. This is so much better. That's exactly what it was. The breakpoint, yeah, this is perfect. I could tweak this. So it totally was that breakpoint issue. Totally fine. The new Gemini Pro did great on this. All right, we're going to do one more quick follow-up here. I'm just going to ask it to hide the target segment column if it gets less than, like, say, 1400 pixels wide. And we'll let it figure out kind of how it wants to do that. Interesting. This one did a media query. Claude did a media query, whereas Google Pro actually used a Tailwind class and set it to hidden. I think both are fair. This one's very explicit about the 1400 pixels that I said. This one's actually using my built-in classes to kind of hide it at certain times. I'm totally fine with both. But for some reason, again, it interjected those stupid comments that it keeps trying to do. So anyway, but watch this here. It goes away fine. I don't know why Gemini Pro is trying to do that. Hopefully, if they kind of get out of experimental stuff like that, will improve. And I'm sure it will. I'm sure it's going to get better. I mean, the fact that Flash 2.0 went from being, I would say, kind of bad to really good from experimental to release they're going to make this thing even better. This is the Claude one. It works great. The target segment hides properly. I can now get to the point where one of the people on my team who likes to run their windows really tiny can actually still click everything they need to click on. And once I told Gemini Pro about that issue, it fixed it. Everything's great. I'd say quite equal at that point. You know, fairly similar timelines. I had to tweak a little bit here and there. Gemini 2.5 Pro is probably the second best model I've seen do stuff like this. The fact that it navigated and built out, for example, that chat interface, updated my sidebar properly. I still am a little bit annoyed that it didn't get my view component correct, even after telling it, and had to do it 2 or 3 times. But I do think I can fix that with better prompting. I just would hope that over time, when I tell it to go look at another file for format ideas, that it can actually get good at that. Again, this is experimental, so I'm sure that's going to get better. Okay, now we're going to do one final test, and then we're going to share my final thoughts on this, because I've done a lot more testing than what I'm showing here today. So here we've got everything configured right, and you have to check this because some of these settings seem to be stored locally. Some of them seem to be stored globally. So I always make sure that I've got all my models set up correctly so I'm not skewing any sort of results here. So the prompt we're going to be doing is one that if you follow it around for a while, it's basically a traffic flow on a city grid. So what I want it to do is use basically something like Pygame or tkinter to basically display vehicles that go through traffic lights, and you can see congestion patterns, and ideally you give me control over the timing that the lights actually stay there, stay red or stay green, and we should see intersections. I've seen a couple models do an absolutely phenomenal job at this. I've seen other models completely fail. And we're going to go ahead and kick this off. We'll see how they take it. Again, I do want to reiterate, prompting matters a ton. I'm really testing this one prompt and how it is done in these two different models here. If I were to take and fully expand on it, maybe build an entire PRD or technical requirements or something around it, I may actually get something completely better or significantly different in both models. So you're going to have to do your own testing. You're probably going to prompt differently than me too. So this is just my way of talking to AI. I really like to talk to it like I'm talking to a mid-level or junior level programmer, where they should be able to figure out some of that stuff on their own. All right, so we have a bunch of code being generated here. I am very impressed with how fast Pro 2.5 is. But Claude did finish, and it cost about 8 cents for it. Now, it's probably likely that I have all of these installed in my Python environment already, so we're going to go ahead and kick this one off and just see what happens here. So we have our green car is stopping. It's ain't bad, actually. It looks like we've got a green and blue car there. I want to see when this turns red if they stop. They stop directly on the light. That's fine. That's cool. And then see these cars are coming through. I'm actually really impressed with this one. Maybe not the best version I've ever seen, but really good nonetheless. The intersections are working well. We've got the number of vehicles is 24. Oh, and we can basically increase the light duration with the up-down arrow. Oh yeah, so basically I can make change quicker. Now it's 40, 50. And I can pause it. This is pretty good. I wish I had a way to like keep adding vehicles though. That'd be kind of sick. Yeah, I like this. So let's take a look at the code generated here. We ended up with 329 lines of code. Very similar. We got 325 here. It did actually add the main call. I do appreciate that. Let's take a look here. What did we get? Could you imagine being in a city where we have to go stoplight, 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 stoplight? But it's working great. We almost had a collision there, but the light changed in time. I don't know if that gives me any ability to change the light timing. So it may have missed that. I don't know. I like both of these. I'll let you guys kind of decide. I sort of like the layout of the Gemini Pro one. Both of these are significantly better than what I was seeing even like a month or two ago. When DeepSeek V3 came out, for example, there was no model that could actually take this prompt at that point and do a sufficient job on it. All right, I modified the code a little bit just to improve the vehicle spawn because I want to see how they go when they interact with each other a little bit more. So they also stack up on top of each other. So yeah, functionality wise, I think they're pretty equal. I do sort of like the way that Gemini Pro has done their light with the sort of red and the green kind of cross there, because that's more indicative of, a kind of an intersection that you would see. Anyway, I think I'll let you guys kind of decide on that one. So just coming back to look at the benchmarks a little bit, we're using Root Code, which is behind the scenes like an agentic coding tool. This rate 63.8% compared to 70.3% in Claude 3.7 Sonnet. But that is with extended thinking. I wish I had the score for the non-extended thinking because I wasn't using that. And I think it did a good job. Like I'm actually very happy with the quality of where this already is. I could work with this all day and not have a problem with it because it's very coachable. It didn't go off the rails too much. It did a great job taking and building that initial mock-up for me that I wanted, which is something I really care a lot about. Neither one of them matched my colors of the mock-up correctly, which is fine. The only thing that was a little bit annoying with the Gemini 2.5 Pro one was that it didn't follow my directions exactly, and I had to kind of coach it a little bit more, but it was coachable. The context window is just something you don't even worry about with this one because it's just so massive. So you could probably keep a chat window going like literally all day and never hit a limit on it. I do not know how caching works or how any of that stuff works behind the scenes or what the price of this is going to be when it releases. So let me just kind of walk you through what I've done. So what I demoed today is a little bit of Python and some front end code and TypeScript. But I've also done some TypeScript APIs. I found them to be very comparable. If I guided Gemini 2.5 Pro with what it needed to do for my API, it did an excellent job. It does a great job navigating and reading files and editing it. I didn't see it fail very much. It is funny that it makes those errors over and over again on like putting comments in. So yeah, it still has quirks that I think could be ironed out as we get away from being the experimental one to the final one. So I'll be incredibly excited for the full version of this. But for now, I'm probably going to be hammering this experimental API for quite a while because I think I can get a lot of value out of it. I am incredibly excited about this model. Google has just been cooking lately, so I'm really excited to see how this goes from being an experimental model to a full version. And I think that's about going to wrap it up. Hopefully this was fun, and I took a lot of the feedback from the last video I did, and hopefully this was better. If not for some reason, and you don't like the way I did this one versus I would say the one shot sort of creating a game or a website or doing a Python script of some kind, let me know. I know we all code very differently, but I decided to maybe move a little bit more into how I actually work on a day-to-day basis, how I'd want to talk to AI. So I'm looking for feedback on that, if that's actually better or not. I may actually try to hook this up for my kids to see if it helps them with mathematics as well, because I just noticed the AIME score of 92% is pretty dang phenomenal there. Anyway, if you found this helpful at all, please let me know in the comments below. Give me a like, and if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I'm just super excited with being able to do this type of thing, and I'm having fun doing it, and all of your feedback helps me become better at what I do. Anyway, guys, until next time, peace out.